So our first baseball, basketball, and football games were all played on Bowman Field. I don't think Dabo would want to trade Bowman Field for Death Valley.
Welcome back to Between the Stripes, where we explore all things Clemson and the ins and outs of student life. Gabby, thank you so much for joining us today. So can you tell us a little bit about Clemson tour guides, especially I know our freshmen obviously have to know a lot about you guys from just coming in, but what is tour guides and how did you get involved?
Absolutely. So Clemson Tour Guides is a voluntary student organization. That's what makes us so unique, is that at a lot of universities, it's a paid position that is operated through the university, but we are very fortunate to be a student organization, so we kind of have our own say in the way that we run our organization. But it is a recruitment-based process, so because we are a voluntary organization, you wouldn't think that 500 students across campus would want to come out and be a tour guide, but that actually does happen. So we have drop-in events, we have a whole recruitment process that has a written application and then 4 rounds of an in-person interviews, mock tours, all these things until you actually get revealed and you get announced that you're a tour guide.
Oh, it's so cool. So what is something that you think people don't know about Clemson tour guides?
I think the biggest thing, one, is that we're unpaid. I think a lot of people assume that it's a paid position. And I think a lot of people assume that you have to be the most outgoing, charismatic person in the world. What I think makes tour guides so special is that we have people from almost every single state. We have some international students that are a part of every major, every college on campus, every student organization you can possibly think of, and none of them is the same. They all have different personalities, different styles of how they give their tour, and that's what makes our organization so amazing and so unique, is because no one tour is the same. Mm-hmm. And so my favorite thing to do is to buddy with my fellow tour guides, and that's basically where you have 2 tour guides going out together, and you bounce off of each other, and you just feed off of each other's energy. And so I have friends that have a completely different style than me, but we give such a great buddy tour because we're so different.
What do you think has been the funniest moment while on a tour for you personally?
Oh, there's so many I could go off of. One of my favorites was when I was walking around campus and I saw Buddy, campus celebrity Buddy, and every time I see him on a tour, I make my entire tour group stop and look at Buddy, and I talk about Buddy. And there was one time where Dave, his owner, overheard me, and so he came by and he let everybody pet Buddy. So that was a really fun moment, and all of the parents went crazy, and they were like, this is just so fun, and Clemson just felt already so homey.
So I know for Clemson tour guides, or at least I think I know, you guys have to improvise a lot because there's not a full written script. It's just you guys go off of a lot of memorization. Is that right?
So we have a whole training process, and we have a chair who is directed solely towards training because everyone has a different learning style and everyone gives their tour a little bit differently. But there's certain things that we have to hit on because if you're going to stand in front of an academic building, you should probably know what it is and what classes are going to be held there. So we know a lot. A little bit about a lot, if that makes sense. Every area of campus we need to know a little bit about, but then of course what's really cool about your individual tour is you get to really go in detail about your experience and what you're a part of. Yeah. So if I have students on my tour that are interested in engineering, I'm not going to be able to explain to them in as much detail about engineering as if I were an engineering student, but I get to talk a lot about my experience, but I can still have enough information to share with them about engineering and then put them in contact with the people that can give them more detail if they're looking for it.
So have you ever had to improvise something because you forgot a fact about a building, or do you have a fun fact that's really funny that all of the other tour guides just don't have that's unique to you?
So I wouldn't say that I necessarily get too bogged down about if I forget something, especially when you're first going through the training process. We tell all the new tour guides don't stress if you feel like you don't hit every single thing on every stop, because these families don't know what you're going to say. They don't know what to expect. So it's more so about just feeling the energy of that tour group. Some tour groups want to hear about your personal experience and a ton of personal stories, and some are give me the facts, give me the statistics. It's just kind of based on who you have and what you feel like that tour needs. But as far as a special fact goes, I don't know if it's necessarily unique to me because we all kind of say similar things, but I'm a big Clemson history buff, and I really grew a deeper appreciation when I took the history of Clemson University class.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that was a thing.
It is so awesome, and I recommend it to everyone. So, Mariah, think about taking it, honestly. It's a 1 credit hour class. It is taught by the university historian, Dr. Otis Pickett, and he takes you through the history of Clemson University all the way to indigenous times before really anything was here all the way through to Clemson in 2025.
Oh, wow.
So the different presidents we've had, history of Harvey Gantt coming to campus and desegregation, bringing women to campus, how the university has changed and evolved over all these years, and learning about it and having a deeper understanding for all of the people that were critical in getting us where we are today. So my favorite fun fact to give is when I'm standing on Bowman, I tell my families, now that Clemson is, a big place and everything, and Bowman is awesome, but what's really special about Bowman is it's home to so much history and tradition, and one of the things is that we actually had our first athletic games there.
Really?
So our first baseball, basketball, and football games were all played on Bowman Field. So I make the joke that I don't think Dabo would want to trade Bowman Field for Death Valley, but it's just cool to see that. So in the university archives is a picture of one of our very first baseball games, and the spectators are lined up where Old Greenville Highway is, and they have horse and buggy, and they're lined up where that road is, watching the game, which is
so
just
cool.
crazy. And you're just thinking about I'm standing in the exact same spot that they did, but living a completely different life, and just how different it is, but some things still stayed the same. So that's what I think is beautiful about Clemson, is honoring the old and the new.
So what made you want to first become a Clemson tour guide? Because you seem like you are enjoying it so much.
For me, I just love this university so much. What I love about this university is that it truly is a family, and we talk about that on every single one of our tours. My biggest way that I can describe it, especially for somebody who's never been on a tour or has never experienced Clemson, is that you could be anywhere in the world and you see a Clemson ring, a paw on your hat, Tigers across your sweatshirt, and you know you found family. And you see people that stop you in airports, see you in passing and say, hey, go Tigers, or they want to talk to you about Clemson or share their experience. And that's one of my favorite things, especially with older alumni that want to just talk to you about Clemson and share their story. So that's just one of my favorite things about Clemson. And so when I found that love for it during my first few years here, and I just wanted to continue to give back to this university and serve it the way that it has poured into me and give back. And so I was like, if I can help these prospective students figure out where their home is going to be, then that is the most rewarding thing in the world.
Tell me a little bit about the other organizations that you're in, because I know you're in a couple more, right?
Yes. And even though I am very fortunate to be involved in other organizations, I would say to any Clemson student to get involved as much as you can, and I honestly regret not getting involved more, which I know sounds silly. My roommates are like, Gabby, you are the worst overcommitter. I am the roommate that's never home, because I'm like, bye, I'm going to this meeting, I'm going to this, and da-da-da-da. I'm always just bouncing around. But I love it, and that just gives me so much joy. But some of the other things I'm involved in on campus is I am a member of Greek Life. So I rushed my freshman year, and I'm a member of Tried Out, and absolutely love that. And just the sisterhood it's brought me, and I was able to get involved on our executive board, which is really cool, as well as some organizations within the College of Business specifically as well.
So I know in the College of Business, you're kind of in a marketing club organization. Mm-hmm. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Because I have a marketing minor, but I'll be graduating May and looking for jobs. Do you think it really helps you in the business aspect of it after college with connections?
For sure. So I'm a part of Cadency, which is one of the signature programs in the College of Business. So the big pillar of experiential learning at Clemson really takes shape in the College of Business through these signature programs. So of course there's the Sales Innovation Program, SIP, Leadership Signature Program, and then Cadency, which is what I'm in. Mm-hmm. So that is kind of connected with the brand comm minor. So I'm a brand comm minor, and that's where I kind of meet that requirement. But you don't have to be a brand comm minor necessarily to get into Cadency, I don't believe. They've kind of changed the criteria in the past few years, but definitely look into it if you're interested. Cadency is really cool because it's our on-campus student-led branding and marketing agency. So you have so many different roles within it. So we have copywriters, we have creatives, which are graphic designers, we have photographers, UI, UX, account managers, strategists, really the whole thing. And what's really cool is you can kind of start out in one path and then work your way around. Yeah. So I applied at the end of my freshman year, started my sophomore year, and I, of course, at first was a creative graphic designer. And then last spring, my mentor, who's over the program, Jackie Herr, she's awesome. She was like, hey, I really think you should push yourself and go into account management. And I was like, I don't know if I can do that. That sounds a little scary.
And a lot of math.
Exactly. And I didn't know exactly what that held. And I was like, I'm a junior. I feel like this is more of a senior role. Yeah. And she was like, no, trust me. I wouldn't suggest this if I didn't think you could do it. And I was like, okay. So I was like, I'm going to be leaning on you for guidance, but it's going to be fine. So I get assigned to our client team because we get to work with real clients, and that's the whole point of working this semester.
Kind of like sales, because I went to the career fair and they said account manager, and I just thought I was like math, but they were like no, like account like sales. So is that more like sales or like math?
I feel like other people have different definitions of it. When I say account management, it's more so in the branding advertising sense of it, of like you're managing the account that like the client with the agency.
Yeah.
So more so about like how you're managing that campaign, any deliverables, strategy research, which does drive sales, yes, but it's not like I'm a salesperson necessarily,
like doing all your finances,
dealing any numbers. No, that's one of my favorite things to say on tours too. Is like graphic comm is the only major in the College of Business that doesn't have to take business calc, and that's a huge.
Do you have to take like math, like besides like the gen ed?
I very fortunately, my high school credits counted towards it. The only math I took here was statistics and 2 levels of accounting. Now, those were not fun times, but we got through it, and it's okay.
How do you think you juggle like everything? Because I know, like, at least for me, like Google Calendar is my friend.
Oh yeah.
Like my phone timer for like each activity I'm going to. Like, yeah, how do you like do that and still kind of like understand what stuff you kind of have to like push back from and like what kind of stuff like you want to do?
It has taken a long time to figure that out.
And you're a junior?
I'm a senior.
Senior? Okay.
Yeah. So Google Calendar, rely on her.
Yeah.
I will say it's gotten to the point where like my friend Anna and I joked, we were like, are we ever going to see each other? And she said, I'll just send you a Google Calendar invite. We're going to figure it out.
Or like a when to meet.
Literally. Yeah. And that's the thing about college is like you think that you have an idea of what it's going to be like when you intern as a freshman, but you have no idea like the opportunities that come about once you're here.
Exactly.
And that's like one of the biggest blessings I feel like is like stuff that you wouldn't think you were going to get involved in, you do. And so then you do have like all of these different meetings and events and all this fun stuff, which is awesome. But then sometimes my worst nightmare is when things overlap and you're like, oh, I have to pick between something.
Yeah.
That's not the best thing. So definitely having to like figure out your priorities is definitely difficult, and it's a skill I'm still learning and I'm not perfect at, but trying to manage everything mostly based on like priority of when something's needed, but also just what I feel like is going to take me more time to work on. Like if I have something that's coming down the pipeline, you know, in 2 weeks and I have more time technically, but it's going to take more time to get done than something else, then I do need to start working on it now, that type of thing. Yeah. And it took me probably a solid 1.5 years when I first entered college to figure out my workflow and how fast I work and what I really need to prioritize as far as like time to get something done, if that makes sense.
I feel like I'm still trying to figure that out.
Oh my gosh. And that's
right
something
now.
that I feel like nobody tells you either.
Yeah.
Is like, that's something that you learn in college, is like not only what you're learning in the classroom, but also like the soft skills of learning your learning style, who you are as a person, how you operate, how you do what you do. At least I was not prepared for that, so.
But like first coming to college, I assumed like we were gonna have all this time just because it's not like the regular high school, like 8 to 4 p.m. Like it's like you get to choose your classes. Like I'll be free all of the time.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. But talking about your sorority, you're part of Tri Delta?
Yes.
So how is that? Like when did you automatically know when you started like rushing that you wanted to go into that sorority? Or how was that experience?
The first in-person round that you go into is philanthropy. And philanthropy was the entire reason that I rushed to begin with. Okay. I was always someone that felt like you should work to be a part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And that you should always work to serve others that are not as fortunate as you. So as we were going through philanthropy round, every single chapter has an amazing philanthropy. Every sorority has a charity that they fundraise for and advocate for. So everyone has something different, and they are all super passionate about it, and they have like their own reason and connection to it. And so everyone finds their thing. So like case in point, my freshman year roommate, she's a Zeta, and her mom unfortunately passed away from breast cancer, and Zeta's philanthropy is breast cancer awareness. So that was like her perfect tie. And so for me, when I was going through the first round of recruitment, I just had this gut feeling. And as soon as I walked into Tri Delt, because our philanthropy is St. Jude Children's Hospital. And in high school, I always fundraised for our dance marathon. I've just always had this love for and passion for kids. And so especially like just seeing the work that St. Jude does, and you see the commercials, you see the t-shirts, like all the things, whatever, but learning more about it and the work that they do and just how special of an organization it is, that just kind of stuck with me. So that got me in the door. And then as we started going through sisterhood and pref, I started really falling in love with the girls that I was meeting, and I felt like it was a sisterhood bond that I had never felt before, because I did really struggle to have like super genuine friendships in high school. And so I came to college really hoping to find that, and I was nervous that I wouldn't, and that, you know, you'd have to like put on a front, maybe act like it's not really you. But Triadult said something in sisterhood that just stood out to me the entire time, and they were like, it's not just a saying to us, it is literally what we live and breathe every single day, and that's bring you. We want you to bring nothing short but your most authentic self. There's no one kind of girl here, there's not one type of person, we're all so unique and so different, and we just want you to bring you just as you are. And that was like the most comforting feeling to this anxious 18-year-old girl coming into college, not sure what life held. And so I'm talking to these girls who are older than me, and they're all beautiful and so smart and involved in so many things, and I'm like, okay, I just want to be like you, this is awesome. And they, in every single chapter, girls were like that. And so I was like, I know I'm going to have great friends no matter what I go into, but it's just finding like who made me feel the most comfortable and felt like they were already a friend. And so for me, that was Triadult, and I just absolutely loved it and really have not turned back since. So it's been really cool to be that person on the other side for girls going through.
That's so refreshing. And I feel like they should put that representation into movies better, because like in these like college movies, it's like sororities, everyone's like mean, and there's like a huge like process to get in, and you don't know if you're going to make it. But what do you think is like a big stereotype that's around like sororities, or even like your sorority, that you think is just like not true?
Yeah, I think Hollywood does college in general a disservice.
Yeah,
we actually make that joke on some of our tours that like
college is not like that at all.
It looks like you're at a concert in a class in a movie when like you go to college and it's like, actually there's like 30, 40 people in your class. It's not gonna be 500 people in an auditorium. You might have a class or two like a gen ed that's like a big auditorium like that, but I mean, Hollywood does not do college any favors, I think. And especially with like the Greek life scene, it's definitely dramatized. I think like sometimes the dramatization of that in movies is like sometimes not fair. So the whole like mean girl thing with sorority girls, I think is really unfounded, because I have found that I have genuinely have friends in every single chapter on this campus, including AOPI, which is the brand new chapter that literally just got here a month ago. So I can genuinely say that because I am friends with every single girls in every single chapter, that they're also genuine and that they are some of the best friends you'll ever meet. And you don't have to just be just with your sorority, just with your pledge class. Like, it's not that cliquey stereotype that I think people make it out to be. Yeah. You can have friends, it's very fluid. And I think that's something that's very unique to Clemson, honestly, because I've talked to my friends that go to other universities and they don't experience that. They feel like it is very cliquey, very segmented. So I think Clemson does a really beautiful job of having a very integrated Greek community in both fraternities and sororities, that we're friends with people outside of our chapter, outside of our pledge class, which I think is really special.
So going back to tour guides, do you remember your first tour?
Oh yeah, I remember it vividly.
Really? How,
yes.
Like, did it go well? Like, were there any like missteps?
So,
and like, who brought you to?
So, being from Columbia, I grew up in very different colors, and my dad is a diehard Gamecock, and so
Did he wear the colors?
He didn't even come on the tour with me.
Oh.
So my mom and I drove up to Clemson, and even though I had lived in the state of South Carolina for 17 years at that point, I had never been up to Clemson, ever, until I came up for my tour my junior year of high school. And we're walking around, and the entire time I just see how beautiful the campus is. The coolest thing to me was every student I saw had a smile ear to ear. And I looked at my mom and I was like, that's what I want. So I decided in the middle of my tour that I was coming to Clemson. So my tour guide, who I still remember, Kayla McGuire, she was awesome. She did a fantastic job and was a big reason why I loved Clemson when I visited.
So on the top of Clemson tour guides, I want to do some rapid fire questions where we just ask you some questions and you have to answer as fast as you can.
Okay.
Okay. So my first question is, what's the most underrated spot on the tour?
Ooh, I would say Horseshoe.
Horseshoe?
Horseshoe's my favorite because I lived there freshman year and people hate on it, but I love it.
Really, I might have hated on it a little bit. Okay, a fact that you drop that always gets a reaction on a tour.
Oh, easy. When I'm in the nursing building, Edwards, I talk about the nursing simulation lab and the one patient, Bertha, who just gives birth over and over and over again. And the parents lose it. They think it's so funny because I like present in kind of a funny
Really?
way, and that always
so
gets
cool.
the jaw drop, the giggles, the dad laughs. Yeah.
Stop! I need to go check that out because that sounds really cool. Okay, what's the weirdest email that you've ever received from a parent or student, or DM?
Honestly, they're usually pretty positive. Usually, if I have a student or a parent reach out to me, they're typically like thanking me for the tour and like just wanting to say that they really appreciate it and that it made a difference. Typically, I've never gotten anything weird, but it's always been pretty positive, which is awesome.
So, a song that you blast before a tour or a big event?
Oh, for me, I played this before my first tour and before I ran the Pursuit this year. Breaking Dishes by Rihanna, it just gets me going. I don't know.
I love that. You definitely like get your energy up.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question. If you weren't a tour guide, what's the one thing on campus that you would do as a job?
Ooh, as a job? I could tell you what other organizations I'd be a part of, but as a job, oh gosh.
Just
and
like
it's like
anything you
working
can pick.
for campus or like just...
Yeah, just like working for campus, like anything that you can pick. It can be like involvement.
I would say if I wasn't a tour guide, I would try to be on Student Alumni Council, which that's my big regret that I didn't do that because I have such appreciation for the ring and I think I would have loved it. But also potentially being either an intern for the president or the board of trustees. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And then one of my friends also just started being a cart girl at the Walker course, and she's been really enjoying that as well. So I don't know, lots of different opportunities on campus that I could possibly do.
That's so interesting. Okay, Gabby, so for students thinking about getting involved on campus or even becoming a tour guide, what piece of advice do you think you have for them?
My biggest piece of advice is to put yourself out there. You're going to be so scared and timid, especially your first semester, and at least I know I was scared to put myself out there, and I didn't think that I was qualified to be in the positions that I wanted to be in, and honestly I still feel like that sometimes. But my biggest piece of advice is everyone at Clemson wants to support the people at Clemson, like that family aspect we were talking about earlier. So put yourself out there. No question is a dumb question. It never hurts to submit an application. Why not? That's my biggest thing is like, why not? Why not try? Why not have that knowing that like you're never gonna have a regret because you didn't try. So anything that piques your interest literally at all, I say go for it. Even if you're not qualified for it, even if you think it's a shot in the dark, you just never know what could come from it. So that's my big piece of advice because at the end of the day, I think that's just so much more worthwhile than thinking, oh, maybe I would have if I did, that kind of thing.
I'm going to start using like why not as a motto now because that's really good. But thank you so much for coming on our podcast.
Thank you so much. This is so fun.
For everyone listening, thank you so much for watching our podcast Between the Stripes, and subscribe at Clemson Student Life and comment down below who you want to see next. Go Tigers!